For decades, Canadians didn't just travel to the U.S., they saw it as an extension of home. But in 2025, something has changed. They are quietly turning away, withdrawing from once familiar trips. No protests, no declarations, just emptier borders, vacant hotel rooms, and numbers that now show the damage. What is happening between the two closest neighbors in the world? Number 1. Florida? Florida used to be the dream of winter, not only for Americans, but for millions of Canadians. When November arrived and the roads in Ontario, Quebec, or Manitoba began to freeze, RV caravans would line up, leaving the border and heading toward the land of sunshine. They didn't come as tourists, they came as people returning to a second home, where backyard BBQ parties bloomed under the January sun, where French mixed with English in golf course conversations, and where many communities were made up of up to 40% Canadians each season. But in 2025, silence began to spread. There was no official announcement, no protests, no harsh criticism. It was simply this: they stopped coming. Empty rows of seats at airports in Fort Lauderdale. Vacation lots left unoccupied. Golf courses missing the familiar laughter. Bilingual welcome signs for Canadian visitors were quietly taken down. And, what's most notable, this didn't stem from a political shock, nor was it an immediate consequence of disaster or conflict. It came from accumulation, of feeling overlooked, of increasingly strict border policies, of a gradual disconnection that Americans didn't realize, until their closest neighbor quietly vanished from the everyday picture. How much is Florida losing? We can easily put a number on it: around $6 billion a year from Canadian visitors alone. A figure that once sustained a complex ecosystem of restaurants, hotels, service workers, shuttle drivers, real estate agents, and small investors. But what Florida is losing now goes far beyond economic data. The state is losing the familiar rhythm of winter, something that had become part of the cultural economic identity for decades. In coastal Naples, once proud of its bustling snowbird communities, many condos now display for rent signs throughout peak season. A small resort owner in Sarasota said in a short interview, "I used to have 12 Canadian couples book 6 months in advance. This year, just one, and they're hesitant about next season." The change isn't just in numbers, it's in tone. Canadians used to arrive in Florida with an open, long-term mindset. Many owned property and lived here for half the year. They were a vital part of the community, not just passing tourists. Their withdrawal is a quiet but clear message: we don't feel as welcome as we used to. The reason isn't just cost, not just exchange rates or airfare. At the core, what they're feeling is a shift in attitude, in visa policies, in how they're treated at border checkpoints, in the cold stares at airports. One elderly Canadian who had driven down to Florida for 17 winters shared, "Last year, I was held at the border for over an hour just to answer ridiculous questions. I didn't enjoy it anymore. I chose to stay home." And that very choice to stay home is creating a major void. Local businesses that once thrived on that winter cycle are now forced to restructure. Golf clubs, dance halls, pharmacies and retirement communities are seeing a sharp drop in memberships. Many are cutting staff, reducing hours, or temporarily closing in March, something unseen in years. Florida is one of the states with the highest employment dependency on tourism in the U.S. Over 1.6 million jobs tied directly or indirectly to this sector. And when one of the most loyal customer groups decides to walk away, the impact doesn't stop at tourism. It hits healthcare, real estate, sales tax, and even public services. This decline isn't a short-term storm. It's a sign of a long winter, not just in weather, but in trust. Florida, once a symbol of warmth and welcome, is becoming a cautionary tale. When you take closeness for granted, One day you'll find yourself speaking to an empty chair. Number 2. New York. Buffalo, Niagara Falls, Watertown. Names that once evoked the image of an America so close to Canada it felt like the village across the stream, where on weekends cars with Ontario plates filled the mall parking lots, where supermarkets prepared bilingual price signs, where July festivals featured red maple leaves alongside the American flag, and where bridges didn't just connect two countries, they linked a shared cross-border culture. But in 2025 in northern New York State, that rhythm of life is slowing in alarming ways. There's no sound when a Canadian decides not to drive into the U.S. for the weekend. No alarms, no slogans. Just empty parking spots in front of Target. Shopping carts stacked without anyone to push them, and 50% off signs going up earlier than ever this year. At Walden Galleria, the retail icon of the Buffalo area, the drop in foot traffic was clear starting in January. Stores that once bustled with Canadian bargain hunters are now shortening their business hours. A cosmetics store manager said during an internal meeting, "We're not losing customers. We're losing familiar faces." A simple sentence, but one that hits the core. To New York's border towns, Canadians aren't just tourists. They are the pulse of daily life. Bridges like the Peace Bridge and Rainbow Bridge were once main arteries for the local economies on both sides. Every car crossing meant a dinner at an American restaurant, a fuel-up, a bit of holiday shopping, or just a habitual trip. In 2024, some weekends saw over 25,000 vehicles from Canada crossing into Buffalo. But by Q1 of 2025, that number had dropped more than 23%, meaning hundreds of thousands of canceled trips in just a few short months. The impact isn't confined to shopping centers. At small stadiums, where school hockey games, spring festivals, or local choir performances once took place, empty seats are now creeping into the front rows. Souvenir vendors, coffee trucks, and small inns that relied on Canadian weekenders have had to adapt, laying off staff, lowering prices, or closing early, all more often than before. Even New York City, long seen as too far for Canadian drivers, isn't escaping the wave. With high costs and increasingly strict airport screening, Canadians are rethinking it all. Is a weekend in Manhattan worth the long security lines, complex stay procedures, and unfavorable exchange rates? Many now choose to stay within Canada or redirect their travel toward Europe, where short-term visas are easier and there's no sense of being interrogated at entry. What's more worrying are the indirect consequences. An internal report from New York's tourism sector shows that just a 10% drop in Canadian spending could erase over $2.1 billion in annual revenue and put 14,000 jobs at risk. Those numbers aren't a distant projection. They're playing out every day in 2025. A restaurant owner in Niagara Falls, who once served over 60% Canadian clientele, said bitterly, "We don't have a menu problem, or a service problem, or even a weather problem. We have a border problem, not physical barriers, but invisible ones that grow larger every year." New York, once a symbol of Canadian-American connection, is now witnessing the opposite, a silent divide. No walls have gone up, but the bridges grow quieter. And with every vehicle that doesn't cross, a small piece of the local economy and faith in long-standing neighborhood ties steps further back. Number 3. Nevada. Las Vegas has never just been a city. For millions of people, it is a dream. Dazzling, vibrant, and always awake. Over the decades, Canadians have played a quiet but irreplaceable role in keeping that dream alive. They came without needing many reasons, just a long winter vacation, an anniversary getaway, a recharge trip in the middle of their frozen season back home. And Las Vegas welcomed them like familiar guests, the kind who always return. But in 2025, The lights on the signs don't shine as brightly, not because of a power shortage, but because of a people shortage. Specifically, a shortage of Canadian footsteps, which used to pour in via direct flights from Vancouver, Toronto, Calgary, or Montreal. These routes were once considered sky highways, connecting the frozen north with the southern desert. But now, airlines are cutting back on flights, even canceling some routes entirely due to low demand. At the International Arrivals Gate of Harry Reid Airport, the lively scenes of Canadian groups stepping off with bright smiles, maple leaf t-shirts, have now become memories. That absence isn't just visual. It has financial consequences. In 2024, over 1.5 million Canadians visited Las Vegas, spending hundreds of millions of US dollars, not just at casinos, but at shows, malls, restaurants, and resorts. They were a stable international group, loyal spenders, culturally familiar, and geographically accessible. But now, blackjack tables are left empty, big stages like Bellagio or Caesar's Palace are selling tickets slower than usual, and restaurants that once had 2-week wait lists are now offering off-peak specials. A senior manager at the Venetian Resort admitted during a March internal meeting, "We're not losing tourists. We're losing a stable stream, a vital part of our financial schedule." This is pushing resorts to adjust strategies, seasonal layoffs, service reductions, and in some cases, temporarily shutting down underperforming areas. However, what's even more concerning is the shift in customer sentiment. On Canadian travel forums, more people are discussing how Las Vegas just isn't the same. Not because the city has changed, but because the way they're treated has changed. Some travelers share unpleasant experiences during U.S. airport customs, being held too long, overly interrogated, or simply feeling viewed as a potential risk. For a city that thrives on emotion and experience, that's a dangerous signal. Just like Florida or New York, Las Vegas survives on the illusion of the infinite. Infinite entertainment, infinite visitors, infinite spending. But when one of its main arteries stops flowing, the body feels it. In Vegas, this shows in dropping revenue, half-filled shows, and casinos that slow down after midnight, something that almost never used to happen. And the impact doesn't stop at the Strip, the city's most famous avenue. Logistics services, taxi drivers, hospitality workers, janitors, freelance performers, all are affected in a ripple effect. When demand drops, so does their income. In a city where over 30% of jobs are directly tied to tourism, every hiccup can trigger a community-wide crisis. An Uber driver in Vegas told a local magazine, "Last year around this season, I had 10 to 12 rides a day from the airport. This year, some days it's just 3. I don't need a chart. I feel the difference on the steering wheel." Las Vegas cannot stop shining. It's in the city's DNA. But in 2025, that shine has dimmed, not from a lack of lights, but from a lack of people. And in a world where travelers have too many other options, the trust once lost from Canadians, once gone, is not easily won back with a concert night or a free buffet. Because Las Vegas, more than anyone here knows, was built for people to come. And when they stop coming, the whole city begins to lose its reason to exist. Number 4. California. If Las Vegas is where people go to explode, then California is where people go to slow down, even if just for a few days. From the winding coastal roads of Big Sur to the sunset afternoons at the Santa Monica Pier, California was once the second dream of Canadians. Familiar yet free-spirited, bustling but not overwhelming. Here vacations weren't escapes. They were a return to gentle weather, an easygoing lifestyle, and an unspoken connection between two modern Western cultures. For years, the presence of Canadian tourists in California was never flashy, but always visible. They stayed in boutique hotels in Napa Valley, shopped at high-end stores in Beverly Hills, sat in the back rows at nighttime performances at the Hollywood Bowl, and sipped coffee at small cafes in Venice Beach, speaking English with the warm, cautious tone typical of the North. In cities like Los Angeles, San Diego, and San Francisco, Canadians weren't just guests. They were the quiet stability within a globally chaotic tourism stream. Yet in 2025, California is feeling an increasingly wide gap, not because of noisy absence, but because of a quiet shortage. Hotels along the coast from Santa Barbara to Huntington Beach reported lower than expected occupancy rates in the first quarter. On Rodeo Drive, luxury shops that once relied on Canadian winter travelers to smooth out sales now have to launch unscheduled promotions. A manager at an international fashion brand revealed, "We used to have a list of VIP Canadian clients who came every February. This year, not a single one returned. And they didn't cancel. They just disappeared." No noise, no complaints, but the consequences are clear. A 12% drop in revenue within 3 months, and private appointments, once booked since the summer before, now canceled or replaced by lower-spending domestic shoppers. Even the theme parks, Disneyland, Universal Studios, SeaWorld, haven't escaped this wave. With worsening exchange rates, stricter border controls, and a growing feeling of being unwelcome by U.S. immigration, many Canadian families are beginning to ask, why come to California when they could explore Japan, Spain, or more simply, stay in British Columbia and enjoy something similar? What's particularly worrying for California is the widespread nature of the impact. Unlike Nevada, where the decline is centered on one city, or Florida, where winter is the peak, in California, Canadians are spread across the entire year and the entire state. They book all-inclusive wine tours, rent Airbnbs along the coast, attend cultural events in San Francisco, shop at outlet malls in Palm Springs, and sometimes do nothing at all. Just live like temporary residents. It's this normalized presence that makes their financial impact bigger than statistics can show. A longtime restaurant owner in Carmel by the Sea shared, "I haven't seen a familiar face from Vancouver this year. Every winter, they'd sit at the window table, order the same clam chowder and Pinot Grigio. I miss them, not just for revenue, but because when they came, the town felt more alive." California is a global destination, with enough appeal to keep running without relying on any one group of visitors. But precisely because of that, small cracks in the foundation, like the quiet withdrawal of Canadian travelers, are more easily overlooked, until they pile up into a full-blown crisis of trust. And trust, as people often say, can't be bought back with a marketing campaign. In a state where tourism supports over 1 million jobs, the disappearance of a loyal customer base doesn't just strain financial ledgers, it makes the entire festival season lose its familiar rhythm. Because California doesn't just sell sunshine, wine, or beaches, it sells a sense of belonging. And when those who once felt they belonged here begin to silently walk away, the greatest loss isn't in percentages. It's in the faces that no longer return. Number 5. Arizona. There are places that don't need a beach to become winter destinations. Arizona is one of them. With clear skies, dry air, and ideal temperatures in the coldest months, this desert land has long been a familiar winter refuge for tens of thousands of Canadians. The snowbirds, who bring with them smiles, RVs, and the habit of sipping morning coffee beside rows of cacti. Not as noisy as Florida, not as glamorous as California. Arizona welcomes with quiet. The kind of quiet they sought, not the kind Arizona is now facing in 2025. In Phoenix, Tucson, and many surrounding small towns, winter communities that once buzzed with life every early November have now grown strangely empty. Community centers once packed with morning yoga sessions, farmers' markets filled with French from Quebec, and local bar live music nights. All are gradually falling into a state of waiting. Waiting for a season people used to call the time Canada returns. But this year, they didn't come back. Along the Sun Corridor, where real estate developers once competed to build luxury resorts exclusively for Canadians, the pace of transactions has slowed dramatically. Condos once booked a year in advance now sit vacant into the Thanksgiving season. At golf clubs, spacing between booked groups is becoming more noticeable. A tea time coordinator in Scottsdale shared, "Every January, we used to turn down bookings from Calgary and Edmonton. This year, less than 60% of slots are filled. I haven't seen this in my 14 years working here." But it's not just golf courses or real estate feeling the hit. In small towns like Yuma or Green Valley, where the economy is nearly built around the winter population, the impact runs deeper. Pharmacies no longer see the seasonal spike in orders. Medical centers, once accustomed to serving older Canadian visitors, are cutting hours as patient numbers fall by more than 35%. Family diners, souvenir shops, RV repair garages, all can feel the absence that came without a single announcement. What's striking in Arizona is that the connection between Canadians and local communities isn't just about money. It's about time. Many of them didn't come as passing tourists, but as part-time residents. They registered for public library memberships, contributed to community funds, taught craft classes at the town hall, and even volunteered in local environmental campaigns. When they don't return, what's lost isn't just revenue, but the warmth of a social connection. A community center director in Mesa shared emotionally, "I miss them like old friends." Every year, by late autumn, we'd prepare the event schedule for the North. Now the bulletin board is just blank and blank. People here feel it clearly. We didn't just lose visitors. We lost part of our community identity. So what made them pull away? The answer isn't just about finances. For many Canadians, the decision not to return to Arizona is the result of a buildup of disappointment. Stricter border procedures, feeling overly scrutinized, unclear visa policies, and most importantly, a sense that the former friendliness is fading. Meanwhile, Canada, with universal health care and a lower cost of living in its western provinces, is becoming a not-so-bad winter option. Many choose to stay, organize community events at home, or turn to destinations like Portugal or Mexico, where the process is easier and the costs are more reasonable. Arizona, with over $3 billion in annual tourism revenue from international markets, cannot afford to ignore this withdrawal wave. And if the trend continues, communities once built around the idea of a second winter will have to ask themselves, who will they be when winter no longer calls to the north? The desert may still glow golden, the sky may stay crystal blue, and the sun may still drape over every valley. But when the laughter, conversations, and connections from familiar guests no longer echo, Arizona isn't just losing tourists. It is losing the very winter that once gave this land its soul. Number 6. Michigan. In the American Midwest, where dense forests and cold rivers weave between two nations, Michigan has long been more than just a state. It's a bridge of steel, asphalt, and memories stretching across generations. Canadians didn't come here for bright lights or blue seas. They came for something strangely close. Detroit was a familiar weekend stop. Port Huron, a peaceful retreat. And Sault Ste. Marie, that wasn't a tourist destination. It was a neighbor. Just one bridge away, one nod to a border officer, and everything felt as if the two countries were never truly separate. But in 2025, Michigan is facing a reality colder than winter. The border is no longer bustling, towns are no longer crowded, and wheels, once spinning constantly between both sides, now sit idle more often than they move. The vehicle checkpoints at Blue Water Bridge and Ambassador Bridge, once traffic choke points every weekend due to overwhelming volume, now sit eerily empty. Since the beginning of the year, vehicle flow from Canada into Michigan has dropped nearly 30%. That's no longer just a statistic. It's a feeling, seen at every intersection, every parking lot, every checkout counter, once accustomed to Ontario-accented English. In stores along the border, from malls in Detroit to small outlet centers in Birch Run, revenue drops are evident without the need for reports. Signs that once read, "Welcome Canadians, 20% off," were once powerful marketing tools, now faded decorations with no one left to read them. A sporting goods store owner in Port Huron shared, unable to hide the regret in his voice, "Last year, over half my customers were from London, Ontario. They bought shoes, jackets, hockey gear. Now, I haven't seen a single Canadian plate in 3 days." What's saddening isn't just the short-term decline, it's the change in habits. Families who used to drive across the border as part of their regular routine are now seeking alternatives within their own country. Those cross-border shopping trips, a long-standing tradition in Ontario and Quebec communities, are being replaced by online orders, or simply no longer happening. And Michigan, a state that heavily relies on this day-tripper traffic, is losing a vital part of its borderland consumer culture. It's not just retail that's affected. Local sports events, from college hockey tournaments to community baseball games, which regularly drew fans from Windsor and Sarnia, are now scaling down. Summer festivals in cities like Traverse City, Mackinac, and Frankenmuth, once lively with strong Canadian attendance, now struggle to recapture their crowd energy. For many organizers, no Canadians means no budget, no sponsorship, no justification to keep the program running. On a deeper level, Michigan is facing a kind of soft crisis, the erosion of faith in the open border relationship once believed to be permanent. In Sault Ste. Marie, where both sides of the border share the same name, many locals speak of an informal divide. No one closed the checkpoint, but the people on the other side simply stopped coming. A local mayor told the press, "We used to be a cross-border community. Now we're like two old friends living on the same street who haven't visited each other in a long time." And that, for Michigan, isn't just about losing a revenue stream. It's about losing a piece of identity, nurtured by that familiar back and forth. When cars from Ontario no longer pull into the local gas stations, when lakeside inns no longer take weekly reservations, when the conversations between American shopkeepers and Canadian customers grow fewer and farther between. That's when Michigan doesn't just lose a visitor, it loses a piece of itself. A piece not built by fences, but by bridges. A bridge of trust, now showing cracks. Number 7. Washington. Along the northwestern border of the United States, there are towns so small they're sometimes forgotten on the map. But to Canadians living in British Columbia, especially in Vancouver and the Fraser Valley, names like Blaine, Bellingham, and Linden are anything but unfamiliar. With just a short drive, they could shop at American supermarkets, get cheaper gas, enjoy a different dinner, or simply take a stroll on the other side of the fence. A place not so different from home, yet always offering something new. These trips didn't need a schedule. No reason. They were habit, a part of the cross-border rhythm of life. But in 2025, those habits are slowly fading, as quietly as they once formed. In Blaine, gas stations once crowded every weekend now close early. Duty-free shops near the crossing no longer have lines of people waiting at the checkout. Belly's Fair Mall in Bellingham, once proudly displaying signs that read, "We speak Canadian," with cashiers who recognized customers from Abbotsford or Richmond by name, now feels eerily empty. Here, you don't need a report to know what's happening. Empty parking lots, falling sales, and most visibly, the absence of British Columbia license plates, once a staple at every gas station, bakery, and roadside cafe. A family diner owner in Linden sighed. "I used to know the birthday of a Canadian customer's son. They came here every week. Now, it's been almost 5 months since I've seen them." Washington isn't Florida. It isn't California. It has no megacities built on entertainment. Washington thrives on community, a borderland community sustained by simple but deep exchanges. And when that flow of people disappears, it's not just businesses that struggle. Social life changes too. Weekend markets lose their bustle. Cultural events in border parks, once places of shared food, music, and laughter, are now left with only locals scattered under flapping tents in the wind. The reason for this silence isn't unfamiliar. For many Canadians, especially seniors or families with young children, crossing into the U.S. now feels risky. It's no longer just about price, it's the experience. The scrutinizing looks at checkpoints, the increasingly strict procedures, the entry questions that feel more accusatory than welcoming. A young mother from Surrey posted on a community forum, "I was held for 40 minutes just to explain why I had milk for my baby. I've taken this route a dozen times, but this is the first time I asked myself, do I still need to come?" And it's precisely these kinds of questions, small, personal, but repeated, that are causing a larger effect. It's not just the absence of shoppers, it's the void in the business models of small enterprises, built on open borders. It's the gap in city budgets, once dependent on nearly 25% of revenue from Canadian-related services. It's the growing concern among local officials, who once believed good relations were a given between two countries sharing the longest, most peaceful border in the world. A tourism official in Bellingham put it bluntly, "We didn't just lose customers, we lost our rhythm." And that might best describe the feeling in towns like Blaine, Linden, and Sumas, a sense of being left behind, not because they were forgotten, but because people no longer want to come back. Washington has never been the center of America's tourism industry, but it used to be the center of something bigger: cross-border kinship. And in 2025, as everyday encounters become memories, border towns are no longer just fighting to keep visitors. They're fighting to keep their meaning in the story of two nations that once saw each other as family. Because here, the border wasn't drawn with barbed wire, but with diners, gas stations, and familiar handshakes. And when those little things disappear, the biggest thing lost is trust.